Right, my dear friends, thinkers, gamers. Monday comes round again. You know, given that I started my work in the philosophy of games with Majora's Mask, I guess it is kind of fitting that we've begun our streaming adventures on a 3 day cycle, 3 times a week, because it does feel a little bit like that wonderful 3 day cycle of Majora's Mask. And if we didn't want to be subject to copyright issues and Aaron had more technical capacity, he would play the Clocktown theme right now. But you get the idea. Monday is back. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope that you were lucky enough to work some gaming in, some thinking about that gaming. I certainly did. Grail, who is already in the chat, hey Grail, knows this already because I had to message him on Patreon, to tell him about it because I was simply losing my mind. But I lost more than this weekend than I would care to admit to Tales of Hearts, so I'm definitely down that rabbit hole now. Oh, that's great, Padre. Well, the hilarious part is I literally changed nothing, so I hope that's not a bad sign for the stream. I hope they haven't downgraded us or something, but I'm happy for you. So much the better. So no complaints on my end. Yes, hello to all the VOD people too. If you are watching this in the weird time distortion of YouTube, speaking of weird bends in the space-time continuum, I apologize for being a little lax about uploading the last few streams, but by the time you're getting this message, I will clearly have caught up, and I intend to very shortly, so hopefully you won't be in the dark for too long. Welcome back, whether you're an old fan or a new fan, to Tales of Praxis. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the founder of WithATerribleFate.com, your first and final source for the literary studies of video games and celebrations of everything to do with them as a storytelling medium. We've had the pleasure of publishing on and studying that topic for almost a decade at this point, a full decade come November. And for the past year, I have had the distinct pleasure, well, 11 months, because we'll have to do something for the proper year celebration next month. But for roughly a year, I have had the distinct pleasure of working on this Tales of Praxis series, specifically focused on Bandai Namco's Tales JRPGs, a series that shaped me as a gamer and a thinker and a person growing up, starting with Tales of Symphonia and moving through the whole series after that. So coming back to it now from the perspective of the philosophy of games, I've been studying and reviewing the whole series, going back to all of the games that made a lot of meaning in my life as a kid, and also filling the gaps by playing the entries in the series that I missed when I was growing up. Asking the question, what's at the heart of these games? As a series, what are they concerned with trying to understand and asking us to understand through these long, elaborate journeys and character studies? And how do they put together a distinctive storytelling language for getting us to engage with these themes and indeed to convert those modes of engagement into tools that we can use to navigate those same issues in our real lives? And how have those tools shaped us as people and also changed the medium of video game storytelling even beyond the limits of that series? So if you love JRPGs, if you love the storytelling of video games, if you love working through your favorite stories or brand new interactive stories in a live book club context, that is exactly what we do on these streams. We've been having a ball of a time, no pun intended, with regard to a ball, that wonderful hometown in Tales of Berseria, studying a range of titles on the stream, starting with Tales of Symphonia Remastered and working our way in a non-linear, thematically driven order all the way through to the conclusion of Tales of Grace's F after well over 100 hours. But I'm optimistic we'll be wrapping up this week. We'll see, but we're certainly on the tail end of that, with intentions of putting together a plan to move on to a dual study of the Tales of Exilia 1 and 2 duology after this, which I'm very excited about and which constitutes more or less the very last gap in my familiarity with the Western releases in the Tales series. So it's going to be a lot of fun in more ways than one, and I'm very excited about that. Yes, Grail, and shout out to you. As always, you were the MVP coming through with guidance for the blocking and tackling that we actually had to do to make progress, especially in this crazy, hyperbolically difficult and complicated post-game content. So I was able to put in more time than I probably needed to grind out some items for that. I think I made it a little bit more convoluted than I needed to, but we should be good. So cross your fingers and toes that that worked out. If you're just getting to know With a Terrible Fate and how we think about video game storytelling, these streams are a great way to get into the weeds, just talking through and thinking through our immediate experiences with games. But we also engage in a wide variety of multimedia studies, including podcasts, lectures, such as the lecture we'll be honored to give at PAX East next month on the nature of bosses, at that interesting intersection at which they sit of gameplay challenge and character study. So if you're interested in a lot of the stuff we've been talking about day in and day out on Tales of Praxis, or if you're interested in that content from some of the other studies you can find on withaterriblefate.com, look forward to that. We will certainly get it recorded in hopes of sharing it and chatting with everyone about it afterwards on the line, on the great internet, as they say. And then also, our bread and butter is publishing long-form analytical studies of games, more in-depth and more rigorously, I would dare say, than you'll find anywhere else. So if you love getting into the weeds with a capital W of the textual content and the thematic value of these games, asking not only what is it that they're saying, but why does it matter? Why do we spend so much time with them, and what do we get out of them? Head over to withaterriblefate.com. And in fact, if you're here because you love the Tales series, check out my most recent study, because as we've been doing these streams, I've also been publishing those sorts of long-form analytical studies on the Tales games with the goal of ultimately publishing some thoughts and views and interpretations on every single one I can get my hands on and work through. So the most recent one was a callback to the very start of the series with Chester Berklight from Tales of Fantasia, and trying to understand not only his character, but using the symbolism of him as well to understand that whole family of Azalea games, Tales of Fantasia and Symphonia and Dawn of the New World, in a different way. And if you've been watching the last few streams, you know that I am also enjoying diving back into a different duology, Tales of Berseria and Zestiria, and working on what is going to be a pretty rewarding and I think contiguous but distinct study in the praxis of the series, and trying to understand how these games give us different windows into understanding how and why we act, and means to sculpt our agency in different ways. In the case of those games, I think, to me at least right now, the interesting core question is what is required of us as individuals in order to make ethical action possible? How do we need to understand our place in the world, our inner lives, before we can project ourselves in certain ways and create the possibility of ethical interaction with those beyond ourselves. So it's fun to dive back into games which also, if you've been watching the last few streams, you know, continue to be controversial even amongst us Praxis gamers, but that's part of what makes this so fun. It's a real-life JRPG adventure on these streams, because just like the wonderfully diverse and fleshed out characters in these parties, so too do we bring very different experiences and views and perspectives on these games and gamings more broadly to the table, and the insights that we get out of these conversations are always greater than the sum of their parts or the sum of any one of our views, which is a lot of the fun. So look forward to that. Look forward to a podcast that was quite fun, which we wrapped after the last stream on Friday, talking about a little bit of everything. I guess that's the MO of the podcast these days, but diving a lot into my friend and colleague Dan Hughes' times with Yakuza 8, which he's really enjoying, but also using that as a way to broach a lot of the questions that we've been concerned with, especially in the post-game of Tales of Graces. Questions like, how do we wrap our arms around a game and get a sufficiently well-defined perspective to even pose the questions that we want to ask and answer through the game in the first place? Which is to say, like we've talked about a lot, especially with JRPGs, there's just so much content in all of these games that seem to fly in so many different directions. And especially if we're really engaged with the game, it can be easy for us to, watch our mind go off in a million different directions as we're really diving into every single side quest and character study, so that we don't even really know where to begin sometimes when we want to take a step back and understand the game as a whole. And so for me, a big part of this most recent episode that was a lot of fun was working through that question of how do we go from sitting down and playing a game like we do on the Tales of Praxis stream and enjoying so many things about it, to crystallizing that into various sorts of interpretations and insights and even conversation prompts that can advance our collective understanding as a group of gamers who love these games about why they matter and what makes them interesting. So if you love those questions, or if you're interested in some thoughtful Japan-informed takes on the Yakuza series, not just the most recent one, but also the series holistically, or even how its storytelling compares with the Tales series, all of that features in the upcoming episode, which I am excited to release this week. Dan is working on it in post right now, so as soon as that's good to go, it will be in your hands. A couple other projects that I've been teasing continue to be teasable. Hopefully some plans for new expanded stream content too, even beyond Tales of Praxis on the With the Terrible Fate stream, so look forward to that. Some other articles introducing and reintroducing analysts beyond myself. So it's a busy time. We got a lot going on the site. I got a lot going on, getting ready also for Dan's wedding in a couple weeks, and preparing for PAX beyond that. So it's a busy time, but it's a good time, and it's a nice time to be with all of you, my dear friends, thinkers, and gamers. Yeah, Signalis. That's one that that remains on my short list after the conversations we've been having about it in the chat, friendos. No, remembering to do stuff is it's a team sport, as my mom would say. Memory is a team sport. So, as we were talking about last time with Aaron's inability to remember place names, right? Between the lot of us, we can put together all the pieces of a JRPG or even a series of JRPGs. Well, my dear friends, it is so nice to be back with you. Switch over here. Like I was mentioning, I'm hopeful that I did the right kind of grinding to advance us through the end of this EX dungeon at least. So knock on wood, cross your fingers and toes. The party ought to be at a decent level, God willing. We have the items to actually, at a minimum, open the doors to the remaining floors for us. And it's been, I would say, not as arduous a journey as the Heavenly Step back in Tales of Berseria, but it's certainly been some kind of odyssey working through this last bit of the adventure, so I won't belabor the point. I'm excited for us to continue to progress. I didn't have a lot by which to situate our adventure on a Monday, but the one thought that I did have, which was just a nice thought in terms of how we can perhaps shift or supplement our perspective in this post-game content to keep the game at least somewhat fresh after, 125 hours now? Oh my goodness. Was the thought in virtue of which I named the stream Out-of-Body Experiences. Yeah, speaking of out-of-body experience, Grail is going to have one listening to this track on repeat. So, well, hopefully we'll be out of the dungeon soon enough for Grail's sake as much as everyone else's. I was thinking, we talked a little bit last time about the symbology and through line of lotuses and the metaphor of planting this lotus garden, and Asbel's master art, especially the Aurora lotus, as a way of representing him achieving enlightenment, but then electing to go back into the flow of suffering across space and time and across different points in his life. I think one thing that I neglected to mention on Friday that I was really struck by was the way in which, if you remember how that art is represented, it channels these different, almost shadow aspects of Asbel, 4 of them, in order to strike an enemy. And I thought, especially in a game with 4 acts to it, how telling, how illuminating that this hero who has journeyed through these different acts in his life is now able to leverage all parts of that journey at different stages in the journey, now going back to Act 3 and reinserting himself into the flow of time in a different place in order to help all of these people and these different incarnations of people, as we talked about, who exist on the Fossilos. So that idea of journeying back through samsara and returning to a different point in order to see things differently and help other people see things differently on the path to enlightenment, I thought was a really uplifting idea, an idea, again, that's consistent with the symbology of this lotus, this flower which blooms from really mucky, dirty water, but blooms with a pure and untouched flower, which is why it has that special symbolism in Buddhism of not just achieving enlightenment, but also emerging from the muck of samsara and all of the attachments and suffering of the earthly world, and emerging in such a way that you can also then return to it for the sake of others and help them bloom in the same way. Something that, again, is very Tales of Graces. But that got me thinking, too, especially since now we're back in the third act, after we've already been through Act 4, and we see a lot of continuity. We see the party carrying with them everything that they learned and achieved in Act 4, such as their Excel modes and all of those titles, various artifacts and insights of and from that journey, right? It also got me thinking, remember how the entire climax of Act 3 was Asbel coming to terms with Lambda and saying, hey, I know you don't trust anyone. I know you've retreated inside yourself and turned yourself into this kind of enemy of the world because you don't see a way to relate and forge trust with other people. Let me take you within myself and show you the possibility of the world being otherwise. Let me show you the beauty in it, which of course then ends up being one of the cornerstones of Act 4. But since now we've gone from Act 4 and completing that back to Act 3, I almost found it interesting for me to consider this dual perspective of Lambda, where from one perspective, since of course we've been through Act 3 and we know the content of it, and we popped back into the end of the Guardia shaft when we reloaded the game in Act 3 for the postgame, we know that there's one clear sense in which Richard and Lambda are hanging out at the core of the Lostalia, waiting to be saved, preparing to annihilate humanity, everything that was going on in the story at that point. And yet, I think there's another interesting sense in which, as Asbel and the party have, in the way we've been talking about, kind of journeyed back in time from the end of Act 4 to now resolve things and help other people achieve their own path to enlightenment in Act 3, I almost found myself thinking, isn't it a nice thought and something that to me resonates with these Buddhist ideas of the game, to suppose that there's still a sense in which Lambda is living within Asbel, so that as Asbel is journeying through Act 3 and helping everyone now with his fully realized form of enlightenment and everything that he's taken from his journey, Lambda also has been on that journey with Asbel and can now look back on himself. That is to say, look back on Lambda at a time when Lambda had fully retreated into isolation and sadness and resentment at the core of the world, shutting everyone out. And from this external perspective now, being with Asbel, say, man, what was it like? What was my experience like back then that I was so walled off and so beaten down and so afraid? And how can I understand that now to not just help others, but kind of in this non-linear, atemporal way, help myself out of that hole and figure out what kind of kindness was necessary to save me and what it took for Asbel to save me in the first place when no one had the expectation that I could be redeemed. So, out-of-body experience in that sense. I think it's an interesting kind of mirror to what we were talking around with my publication on Fantasia, with the idea of Daus as this atemporal villain who exists above the Azalea timeline and isn't interested in any of the events in the world per se. Of course, when Daus does that, it's in a very a disinterested way that is not to the benefit of anyone in the world, nor really at the end of the day to himself. Whereas Lambda almost flips that on its head, I would say, where once he's able to kind of see beyond the confines of his own journey and his own sadness through the help of Asbel and the party, he's able to achieve that same kind of nonlinear and atemporal enlightenment that they have, where to me at least it makes sense that he would be in the right position by the end of Act 4 to, like us, like the party, step beyond the timeline, step out of the wheel of samsara and think about things more holistically, cosmically, spiritually, whatever word you want to put to it. So that was my thought. That's right. We said it all really last week, didn't we, Grail, when we said that in and out, this game is just Ocarina of Time, but totally JRPG and Talesified. Lambda was douse. In this 45-minute video essay, I will show that. No, we're not going to go down that road. I'm not gonna spoil too much about Tales of Hearts, nor dive into it too much at the start of this, because I am excited to work through the post game of Tales of Grace's F and wrap that up. But Grail, since we started talking about it, I'll just say for your benefit as much as anyone's, I am definitely past the point of no return in terms of being able to put down Hearts. I am so absorbed by the story. I am sucked in, dialed in. I'm not totally sure how far through the story I am, which is one of the very fun things about working through a Tales game that I've never experienced before, but certainly at least in the second act. And I'll say the thing about it, which is really fun, which we've been talking about as we've gotten further and further into the Tales of Praxis series, is that now that I have recently studied so many of these games, I can see so many cool intersections and remixes of various themes and ideas from the different games thrown together in a really cool and distinct and unusual way to create the special contours and color that Tales of Hearts has, where now that it seems as if the big bad has finally been revealed, I can see colors of both the villains from Tales of Symphonia and Tales of Destiny in him. In terms of the world, it interestingly bears a lot of similarity that I was not expecting, actually, to the world structure of Tales of Grace's F, right here. That duality of Ephinia and Phodra that we've been talking about ad nauseum for the past 125 hours. And even in the protagonist, I wasn't expecting to see shades of my boy Luke from Tales of the Abyss. But it is so cool, and I'm excited to kind of do a more piece-by-piece mapping of this at some point, to see all of those different elements shine through in a way that doesn't feel like alphabet soup or word salad, but that actually is, I would say, a meticulous construction of a new art object through the kind of Lego-style building blocks of the other games and the other ideas in the series. And I think it's really special, one, that the series can do that, and two, it just recommends to me more the value of this kind of enterprise we're engaging on, trying to study and appreciate all of the games in this holistic context, because I think, like I was talking about earlier in this kickoff, JRPGs can be so vast that it can be really hard to know even where to begin to wrap your arms around that experience and make sense of what's going on. And if you do have that backing and the muscle memory of having worked through and tried to understand what the other games in the series are concerned with, I think it really does give you a firmer starting point and framework for understanding what a new game that you sit down and work through is concerned with at all. So that's been a lot of fun for me. I definitely continue to fall in love with the characters, but as the plot unfolds, it has my attention in the way that only a Tales game can. And has gotten me excited to not only to continue with these one-off studies, which I'll certainly do, but the more I've been thinking about this intersectionality that I'm discussing now, the more I find myself thinking, oh, I can already start to see the contours of a comprehensive study emerging once I'm done with looking at all of these games, where you could almost try to map like what the Tales series as a whole is saying about personal identity and the past and community relationships and how you decide what to do with the future, almost as a kind of like, I don't even know the right way to think about the visualization yet, but something like a flowchart or a way of like otherwise diagramming the relationships between the theses of the different games and how they represent those ideas. So there's something swirling around in my head kind of akin to the like modeling that I did when I was first trying to think through the structure of my study for Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and Wittgenstein. So take that as you will. I'm not promising another book, but I am promising a continued, really rewarding and fun romp through the study of the philosophy of the Tales games. So at a minimum, look forward to that. Yes, heart's good in a nutshell. Heart's good. Aaron excited to continue the good hearts. All right, friends, welcome back to Tales of Praxis. It's a pleasure to have you. How about that? 30 minutes. That's a tight opening on a Monday, if ever we've had one, right? All right, so you might recall more materially, we were jumping into floor number 8. And I'm going to save one more time because I have some deep-seated anxiety that I'm going to choke on a floor and lose one of the only 2 items that we have to gain access to these floors. So if I end up doing that, I might simply reboot a save to save us all some time, but hopefully it won't come to that. Pottery, yes. Hearts and Exilia, and then Beyond the Mothership one that we got localized on the PSP. I still have to play that. And then I would say Legendia is half a gap here, because as you know, I've played at least the main story of Legendia before, but I never got through really like the back half of that game because I didn't realize that's how it worked at the time. And I also played it enough years ago that I really have a vanishingly light memory of it. But yes, I think that's the long and short of the remaining gaps that I have. So it really does feel like I'm sealing up the last few holes at this point. Which I'm telling you, that's going to make the Exilia and Exilia 2 stream all the more rewarding. So stay tuned and look forward to that. I know I am. I'm getting all the more hyped as we get closer to it. Save's coming. That's right. The dream. All right, let's do this. Yeah, Grail, that's another way of putting what I was saying about Hearts. Part of what I find so remarkable about it is exactly that. It borrows from and relies on so many of the other games to create something that I think very much to me feels like its own language and something that is truly unique and stands on its own amongst the games. Even though I guess we don't talk about it as much as we have on this stream as, you know, unique and standalone in the series in the way that we do Tales of Grace's F, I definitely get that same feeling from it. Which scarf did we just get? Am I crazy? Maybe I am crazy. Oh, maybe it was a lesser tier item because that's the way this works sometimes. I forgot. But yes, no, I would say a big part of what has me so dialed into it is that every time I think I have its theming and what it's interested in looking at pegged, it will take the story in a direction that I wasn't quite expecting, that will expand the scope of what it's talking about and what it's concerned with in a really cool way. Like I told you, even something like that mini resolution scene that I mentioned to you on Patreon, I just found myself totally like floored by, to the point that I was live reacting out loud on my couch like, oh man, that's so awesome, I can't believe they did that. And it's pretty rare for me to do that with games, or frankly with other media, when I'm just sitting down and consuming it on my own. So I like it because actually it put me in mind of a conversation that we had quite a while ago about Tales of Arise, because I remember you saying last week when we were talking about Hearts, oh, you know, a lot of people, like, they don't know what to do with the story because they think, like, it's all about Kahaku and it's not that interesting. And as I'm getting further into it, that almost strikes me as a parallel to what I feel like happens a decent amount with Tales of Arise, and probably with a lot of games, where I think based on how they're marketed and based on the way in which their first acts are represented, people I think sometimes will get a bias in their head or in their memory after playing the game, thinking that the entirety of the game is concerned with sort of the factors that primarily just motivate the party to get going in the first act. So thinking about Tales of Arise, for instance, as concerned with mostly, you know, rising up and liberation and rebellion movements. And of course, that's a huge part of Arise. Wouldn't say it's the only part. I would say it's the thing that animates and motivates the first act in the way that I'm talking about. And similarly with the idea of saving Kahaku, or, you know, like going on the journey of regeneration, right? Another great example from Tales of Symphonia. So I think I mentioned to you at the time when that came up with Kohaku, I said, you know, like I get that sense from the story that it seems really interested with her, but knowing where I am in the story and knowing the Tales series, I wouldn't be surprised if they were going to end up going in a really different direction with that, or saying something unexpected and quite challenging about our focus on Kohaku. And it already has done exactly that, which has me giddy and excited and interested to see where it goes next. I'll also say, without saying too much about it, because I don't want to risk spoiling it, but especially for the Tales heads in the audience, one of the things that I really enjoyed that felt to me unusual about it, and it's funny because I think without even realizing it, I think Hearts kind of baited me into being primed for this in a cool way, because I found myself as I was working through it saying, man, you know, it's interesting to me how few of these Tales games are pretty directly concerned with, like, the parents of these characters that we see in these parties. And, like, yeah, we'll get these little portraits every now and then, and pretty significant exceptions to the rule, but almost always they're, you know, pretty young kids who are finding their way and building a family without an active presence or influence of parents in their lives. And, like, as soon as I found myself thinking about that, probably the next day when I was sitting down and playing it, Hearts like opened its story to this really interesting like extended study and history of the characters' parents in a way that totally, to me, like turned on its head my understanding of what brought the party together in the first place, and also just added a lot of that frankly, idea of lineage and legacy that Tales of Grace's F is obviously also meditating on in a way that I don't oftentimes feel is foregrounded in the Tales games. Not to the detriment of any of the games. They're concerned with other things and they show them those things in other ways. But it's been really, really cool to see that come to fruition just in the last few motions of the game that I've played. So I'm really excited to see how they map out their story as a kind of multi-generational struggle going forward. I'd say that's kind of what I'm primarily keyed into right now. And that's also true, Grail. Like, I'm strawmanning Kohaku a little bit to make my point, but I also think even in that first act with the way in which you're saving her, I think there's so much to appreciate there. It's one of those really cool cases where, you know, we might have talked about this last time, but it's a great JRPG twist in my mind where, yeah, you know, you set out to put Humpty Dumpty back together and save this one girl, but by saving her, you're actually, like, you know, the worst kept secret about the game is that you're getting all of these character studies and perspectives on everyone else in the world except for Kohaku, seen through the lens of Kohaku's character, which I think is a really interesting way to structure just like the progression of events in the plot and also what it means to navigate the world. It's like, seen through one lens, you're navigating the heart of this girl. Seen through another lens, you're coming to understand the nature of all the different people who populate the world as mediated by her heart. So I think there's a lot to appreciate and value there too. And yeah, I think it's a human and totally relatable impulse to feel that way or remember games that way, as you say, Grail, with you and Berseria. I think for me personally too, that's one of the reasons that I've really been enjoying Tales of Praxis as a way of like working through and internalizing and processing these games all at once, because I know I do the same thing, especially when time elapses and it's been a number of years since you have played a game. Our minds kind of, I think whether we like it or not, will oftentimes reduce the games to these flashbulb moments, you know, whether that's what the first act and the advertising really foregrounded for us, or if it was a particular twist that we found really memorable, or a particular character line. And it's great to be able to have that mental library of moments in games that we really like. But I was talking about this actually with a friend of mine yesterday, because we were getting ready for, as you know, Final Fantasy Rebirth. And we were thinking about it with Final Fantasy VII as well, because, as you know, that's a game that looms larger than life in terms of the impact it's had on the culture. And I think with that game, as with all the other games that we're talking about, it's so easy when you haven't played the game recently and you're just thinking about the effect it had on you or how it influenced other games to get distorted and kind of warped perception of what the game was trying to say in the first place, because you only remember certain parts of it, or you only think about certain like sub-themes or subplots of it that were carried on and picked up by other games in the culture or something like that, which is, a fine and valuable thing to think about, but I think we also owe it to ourselves and to the games, to the art objects, to realize that it's maybe not always a fair and accurate representation of the source text itself when we just remember how it's been colored in our memory. By the way, distortion of memory, right? Like a big theme in all these JRPGs that we're talking about, and something that has a lot of human substance to it. But so I think, that's not to say it's wrong for us to do that. I think it's human for us to kind of misremember or distort our recollection of games. But I think that, to me, is also just further impetus to recognize that we owe it to these games, especially if we like them or find them really interesting, to revisit them a decent amount, right? And replay them and think about all of the different ways in which the pieces fit together and how the pieces in the series fit together, like we're doing with the Tale series right now, right? And I can tell you from experience, the Final Fantasy VII series certainly rewards that kind of revisit as well. So a human way to remember games, but also a good, not blind spot, but just aspect of our experience, I think, to recognize and counterbalance with some good replays and studies. That, as much as anything, is why I like to do these long-form studies and analyses that I do, because in order to do this kind of philosophical treatment that I do of games, I really do have to look quite extensively at the source text and everything that happens in them, and that certainly doesn't guarantee that I'm going to remember every one of those details going forward, but it does, to me at least, make me feel like I've wrapped my head around what I feel like I've gotten out of the game as a whole, and so then when I go and file it away in my mental Rolodex or mental library of games, when I do that with a game that I've analyzed versus a game that I've casually played, I do feel like the memory file that I save and tuck away is more robustly developed and can be utilized in my future gaming and thinking in different ways than when I just play a game sort of passively, only engaging with it in a colloquial way as I'm working through it.
It's time! Expunging sword! Not yet! Pulled it off, somehow.
It is a very weird camera angle, isn't it, Pottery? That's one of those things that I wish you hadn't pointed out, because speaking of things that you don't consciously process while you're playing, I don't think I had actually noticed that, and now I'm never going to be able to unsee that as we work our way through these remaining floors. All the more reason to get out of here ASAP, right? I love that, by the way, Grail. This is not surprising given that it's the Tale series, and I've talked about this in some of my other studies, but one of the other things that I've had a lot of fun with in Hearts is the way in which it uses and comments on betrayal in its story. So yeah, I think that fight that you're talking about is a great example. I'm sure you know the other example that I'm thinking of in my mind as well. There's another key example of betrayal in that game. But yeah, I think it's cool to see the way in which characters pretty immediately address and work to ameliorate the situations in which they are betrayed in pretty, I would say, human and heartfelt ways. No pun intended, I guess. But yes, especially in the wake of kind of the family history that I was talking about, one of the other questions that is on the top of my mind that it sounds like resonates with the commentary you're talking about is this question of, what does it really mean in this world for someone to lose their emotions? what do they lose access to, what are they still capable of. And so, you know, in a world where there are pretty clear and well-defined explanations of the different parts of a person between their emotions and their will and their spirit and their body, understanding how those pieces fit together and what it takes to coordinate them in the right way to actually become a fully realized person, I think is a very cool set of questions to consider. And notice too, I mean, as we're talking about that and working through Tales of Grace's F, that's a great case in the wild of pointing out how different these games can be in the way in which they address a pretty similar set of concerns and questions, because like we've been talking to death in Tales of Grace's F, doesn't tell you a lot about the inner nature of people in terms of like the metaphysics of how the different parts of them are put together or how they derive from the world. We're only just starting to learn a little bit about the history of Eleth from the Chroma Dragons. It's not clear how much more we'll learn, whereas Tales of Hearts, from the outset, gives you very, very robust and precise explanations of these are all the different components of a person. This is what it takes to cultivate them. This is what it takes to change them. This is what you risk losing if you lose one of them. So I think it's a really cool testament to the series in terms of its continuity yet diversity, that those games can seem so deeply aligned with each other while addressing pretty similar themes with totally different approaches and methodologies.
Victory is ours.
Don't say the dreaded one. Guys, I'm already filled with terror. I don't need more terror. Alright. We're pretty good. I'm just going to try to get down to 100% for my own sanity, because I fear having to restart this floor. Have I mentioned that I'm living in terror until we're out of the Zhonecage? Help me.
Shining blade of triumph.
How about this?
Be gone.
I'll show you my true potential.
I will say, I've gotten used to needing to keep track of the actual ingredients that I have on hand for cooking in Hearts, because that's the way its cooking system works that, God help me, I've found myself getting really into. So it is nice to be back in Eleth world where I can be confident that as long as I make sure the Eleth mixer is charged, then we can have these wonderful recipes on hand to revive us in battle if we need it. No ingredients necessary.
Be gone.
I guess the rumors are true.
Oh boy, that's right, Grail. My reward for the suffering is more suffering. But see, at least we're in a game that's largely concerned with suffering, so at least it's thematically connected. Oh no, it's Fourier! I didn't see who it actually was, so I missed Pottery's choke. Fourier, why are you here?
Fourier, what are you doing here?
That's what I said.
Some loser named Salamis decided to drag me up here. I was busy, you know.
Okay, and so this might be a good point of analogy with Frederick, because remember we talked a lot about the reincarnation of people from the game and what seemed to be these humanoids or similar with Cedric and Emerald, but it was one of you, Grail or Pottery, who pointed out it seemed like maybe Frederick was just normal Frederick, even though he seemed to be acting a little different up here. So Fourier also seems to be herself in some sense, so maybe that'll help give us some traction on how they're related or unrelated to the other people who are here.
Well, Pascal, as long as I'm here, you might as well return the lap comp I asked you to pick up for me.
Oh yeah, that thing that started this way back when. Rockagung is also on my list. We gotta give the Rockagung the old college try, even if we have to turn down the difficulty for him. So we have a few things left to do in this never-ending story, and I'm not mad about it. I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, see, that's a funny story. I see. In that case, we have no choice. You must fight me.
It's the only logical conclusion.
I can't fight you. Have you forgotten how to battle?
Yes.
What? No, that's not what.
Not everyone knows how to do everything for you.
Oh.
Fighting
so
isn't the
you
only
already deserve
thing.
to have defeated me, is that it? Oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Stop it! Of course, if we did fight, I'd totally win.
Great line reading.
Is that so? Well, anyway, I just happened to have made a machine for you all. Voila! I call it a teleporter. What is a teleport? This device can summon one of my Varus monsters instantly.
Thanks, I hate it.
Wow, that's amazing! Show us some more!
Pascal, I
If you
love
want
you.
to see more, you'll just have to fight me. And I don't think you'll win so easily.
You know, there is... that's one of those points, Grail, where I find myself wishing I had deeper experience with Pokemon, because I hadn't made that connection, but as you say it, this does kind of smack of like the Pokemon post-game of going back and re-challenging the Elite Four and all of the gym trainers, you know? Like, okay, we've been through our journey, we've had our development, now we want to go back and have like a prize match with all of the different leaders throughout the world. That's kind of cool. Not a flavor that you get a lot in the Tales games. I was wondering if you were going to pick that up, Pottery.
Fine, we'll fight. Are you happy now, sis?
Help me, I've been turned into a Tim Robinson machine. All I know is I think you should leave.
I don't quite follow, but sure.
I don't quite follow, but sure. Whom do we deal with first? I'm kind of worried she can summon someone else, but... let's start with her. Fourier, why? Why are you so strong? Oh my god.
Lady of Azure, blaze to the unknown.
That's interesting. So she can also channel the glyphs, which reinforces the idea, because she's Pascal's sister, that there is something about their bloodline, which I still want answered. I'm thinking I might try to deal with the Proto-Virus first, actually. Well, that makes me feel better about Aaron thinking he might have to turn the difficulty down, Grail, so thank you for saying that at least.
Rip to pieces! Stampede strike!
Yeah, I think dealing with this first is the better way to go. So, Reptile, Beast, and Dragon. I'm also going to try to be a big boy and actually target his weaknesses. Reptile, Galma, okay. Dragon. Oh, we're down to here though. So Asbel doesn't really have a lot of burst starts that can deal with that. Well, we have Galma, at least that's something. Yeah, I think that's reasonable, Grail. God, this is really rough. That might be too late. Yep, that's gonna be too late. I don't think she'll be able to get a life bottle off. Oh, okay. Alright. Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Pottery. It definitely, that's kind of what I was saying last time when we started thinking about should we start looking more seriously at weaknesses? Because I like the idea, and also it does definitely feel like a chore to me to actually get it done. Especially when not every character can easily cover all of them. And like, I get that you can spread it across characters, and that's part of it, and you get the party to work together, but it does just end up feeling like a lot to manage on a fight-by-fight basis. Or even a floor-by-floor basis, since as you mentioned a lot of times, especially when you're grinding through a dungeon, like the enemies at least are sufficiently similar that makes it a little easier to manage. No, Grail, we gotta do it in order. Come on, dude, have faith. I threw an all divide, so I feel a little better now. Their DPS was just ridiculous. We have 2 healers in the party, so that should make it possible at least. Hey, Pink, it has. Welcome back. Hope you've been well. We are working through the never-ending study of Tales of Grace's F, which has been an absolute gem of a game. And now I'm trying to see if I can avoid getting wrecked by Fourier and her beastly friend. Yeah, well, we'll test that theory about the hitting one weakness, Grail, because that's about where Asbel's at with Gaelmar right now, so hopefully that'll be enough to manage this Proto-Varus. I would say things have been great. We have had a lot of different thoughts, big and small, about this game going through it. And honestly, especially as the playthrough has gotten longer, I was worried that we'd lose a lot of the details along the way, but it really has had me walking away feeling like this is a game where there are so many little nuances to study, but they really do all add up into one really compelling story and experience that has some pretty clear and cogent things to say about the nature of the self and what it takes to bond with others and develop the legacy and create a positive influence on the planet and things like that. So I'm excited to see whether and how much it carries through the rest of the post-game, which I have never done before, so this is brand new for me. Fourier, please. Well, at least she only hit one of us.
Sorry about that. This majestic land. I won't lose.
Oh, I'll also say while I was grinding, the most important things that you missed, I found Judith's Carta and I found Luke's Carta. 2 fantastic characters. And 2 great quotes. For Judith, they had, of course, "This is the path that I've chosen," from one of her most iconic moments. If you know, then you know. And for Luke, they chose, "I'm the ambassador," which is one of my funniest bits of Luke's earlier development, and not what I would have expected them to choose, but I love that they did. Okay, we're getting a little hairy on life bottles. Oh, for you. Leave us alone. Yeah, getting sandwiched between them, I think, is the bad ending. She stole my mystic, but I'll take it. It is a fight against her sister, I guess, so that's fair. The most ignorant asshole possible, specifically. Well, get excited with no spoilers, because our next live book club that we have planned, actually, since you haven't been here in a while, is a Wombo combo of Exilia 1 and 2. Two which I have not played before, so I'm very excited to work through and think through for the first time with the fine band of Praxis gamers that we have on the stream. Master Van told me to go do the grocery shopping, so I'm gonna go do it. I'm the ambassador. He said that grocery shopping makes me special. If I get all the groceries, I'll be a hero, and then I'll earn the respect of my peers and family, and they'll have to let me out of my stupid rich house. Have I mentioned how much I love Tales of the Abyss? Go play Tales of the Abyss. You lost your friend, Fourier. You're gonna have a bad time now. Yeah, but he's afraid they'll put him back in his stupid rich house. Speaking of Tales games as studies in fear and anxiety. The rifle is just so powerful. It's a good point. I did notice that while I was grinding Grail. Even on her AI settings, she was carrying a lot more of the fights than I expected. She knows how to pack a punch, and have a lot of fun doing it. Oh, bad timing. That's gonna override my ability to use a finality. Oh, maybe not. Oh, awesome. I was worried that timing wasn't gonna work out. That's hilarious, Grail, since I've been doing most of this playthrough as Haspel. I don't think I had processed that he's the only one you don't enjoy playing as.
What's your motto?
Never give up!
I couldn't quite hear what you said at the end. Something about research?
Oh dear. My teleporter broke.
Yeah, battle will do that to you.
Bummer. It's alright. I was just going to let you have it anyway.
Aww.
So, Fourier, what's the lab comp do? It's like a portable version of the Archive of Wisdom. Oh wow, that's awesome! Let me tell you how to use it. Thanks, sis. That sounds great! Anyway, we gotta go, so bye! Isn't that something? I barely had to explain how it works. She really is better than me.
Oh, for you. Fox scarf? Is it a fox? Is it a scarf? Whatever it is, it's alive and well, so no worries. Pascal got a living scarf from her sister? I'll take it. It's interesting, too, thinking about that as I promised we would in conversation with the other bosses that we fought in the Zhonecage, because the way Fourier just quietly said, you know, wow, I can't believe it took my sister no time to understand what this new technology was. She really is better than me. It reminds me, or puts me in mind of the fact that with the other bosses too, bosses like Cedric and Emerald, and even like the animal bosses, they vocalized the things that were frustrating them or the things that were making them suffer in the world, but it wasn't really like the party helped them to actually overcome those things necessarily, in terms of finding a way out of that pain and suffering. It was more like the party was getting them to vocalize and understand those things that they were suffering in the first place. Because notice, the trend seems to be the bosses will engage you and you have to fight them, and it's only after you defeat them that then the tone gets a little less silly, a little more serious, and they vocalize the things that have really been maybe even unconsciously driving them for quite a while. So, which isn't to say that it's not a game that's concerned with helping other people overcome their suffering. Rather, I think, to the point that we've been talking about quite a bit, with characters like everyone in the party, but our favorite example is Malik and also Sophie, who have these experiences in their past that can't really be easily shared with other people. A corollary of that is that it is much harder and correspondingly more important to help people figure out how to vocalize those core experiences or aspects of themselves that are causing themselves so much suffering in the first place, so that they can then understand what their issues are and then begin to work through them either on their own or with the support of others. So moving the process perhaps back a step further than what I had in mind when we were talking about it over the last couple streams. Alright, let's refill our Elith mixer before we move on here. And I was promised a 9th floor that is less of a hassle, so I'm looking forward to that and hoping that Grail is not misleading me as a joke. Grail, can you remind me which one Virtuous Radiance is? Sharia has so many cool spells, which I have been noticing. I was appreciating her Mystic Art showcase as we were grinding earlier, as I was grinding earlier, excuse me. But I don't remember which one that is off the top of my head. Man, that does sound like a powerful but long and taxing adventure if you don't know Japanese. But good on you. I mean, that speaks to your dedication too, dude. Not that I'm surprised at this point. I feel like there was one more thing I wanted to do. Oh, I was going to look at just the art itself. Virtuous Radiance. A sacred art that cleanses defiled souls by dealing heavy damage to all foes. Oh, this is her master art, right? That's right. Well, I'll tell you what's on the top of my mind about it, Grail. It's that thing that we didn't quite get resolved last time, where we noted the title that actually gives her access to that specific art, her level 100 title, identifies her as the only person in the world who can heal with Krius arts without actually using Krius. And to my knowledge, we still haven't quite gotten to the bottom of why that is. Maybe they talked about it earlier in the game. I still don't quite remember, but it does seem like she's not just a healer, she's this kind of like unique sacred presence within the world that's able to like heal and also rectify a lot of the pain that's going on around her, like in the obvious sense that she heals people in lot, but I think also in the less obvious sense that like I think the same impulse in her that she had even when she was a kid, when she saw Asbel suffering without his brother when Hubert was sent away, and she said, you know, let me take his place for you, I don't want you to be suffering. I think that same impulse has matured in her adulthood to this point where even while she's outside of the core friendship pact that sets so much of the game in motion, that Asbel and Sophie and Richard and eventually Lambda make, there's a sense in which I think it's important that she's outside of that because her role is exactly this kind of healing and mediating kind of glue or sacred medium that allows everyone else to interact with each other. Even to the point where, you know, think about the way Act 4 ended, right? With Sophie and Asbel and Sharia having that conversation, basically bringing Asbel and Sharia together. But a big part of that, at least as I read it, was really Sophie speaking up to Sharia and saying, let me tell you about this dream I had, and Sharia like mirroring that back to Sophie and saying, would that make you happy? And I felt like one of the things that I don't think we dwelled enough on back when that happened that was really touching to me was, like we discussed at that point, it's not just Sophie, it's Sophie synthesized with that little queen who was so alone and weak and looking for a reason to hope and believe in people at the end of that confrontation at the heart of Fodra. And I really felt like the magic of Sharia in that moment was that she was able to look into Sophie and see not just Sophie, but what both Sophie and the little queen were looking for, the hope of this kind of dream for a future with children and something to believe in. And so for Sharia to ask Sophie, is that the kind of future that would make you happy if it turned from a dream into reality? It seemed to me like this very Sharia gesture of asking someone the exact right kind of question that would allow them to heal and further develop and grow. So I almost, like, that question to me is sort of like an interesting conversational version of that same art that you're talking about. So a bit of a long tangent, but I think to me it belies the fact that Sharia is one of those characters, maybe almost a Chester style character, right? Who's oftentimes backgrounded and oftentimes on the sidelines, but I think in a way that speaks to the content of her character and the way in which she is importantly supportive without always taking the center stage. So I think it's worth us dwelling on that a bit more before we wrap up Tales of Grace's F, for sure. Yeah, simple truth. That's a great point, Grail, and I think that speaks to exactly what we're gesturing at and talking about here. And it's also just like the linear aspect of it, right? The fact that it's a straight, simple, undirected line, direct line, I think also speaks to the themes that we're talking about. I'll make sure that we save here so we don't lose that victory on the 8th floor. All right, on to floor 9. Yeah, I was thinking about, I said on to 4.9, but joke's on you. We're doing a literary study stream. This is what you signed up for. I will put this in everyone's head since we are 125 hours into the game, because this is something that, as you can tell, I've also been going back to as we've been wrapping up. So think about this whole roster of characters, all right? Asbel, Pascal, Sophie, Sharia, Hubert, Malik, and Richard, of course, who is not here but part of the party. You can even expand it to Lambda and the Little Queen if you want to. You don't need to answer now, but just think, you know, which characters have really governed or made an outsized impact on your overall experience of this journey that we've had together? And then also, as you look back on it, do you feel like there are characters that we maybe haven't thought about enough, where maybe we still have lingering questions that it's worth exploring now that we've seen almost all of their journey? Because it's incredibly challenging, as I've been talking about, to keep track of all the different threads and even all of the main characters in a JRPG of this magnitude. So I think even just getting into the habit of consciously asking that question, especially as you get into postgame and trying to answer it for yourself or work through it on the fun live book club that you're a part of, can be a productive way into further insights of the art object you're engaging with. All right, now we're going to go. Oh man, here I am talking about literary theory and you all are just going to make me hungry. I ate right before this, but you got my stomach rumbling here. Going to be back in Tales of Berseria with all of this food-based symbolism. Alright, we ride. Don't say bye-bye, Grail, we're going to get it back. But thank you again for giving me the guidance on how to get that. It's funny because I said I made it more complicated than I needed to, because I didn't realize that you can't offer up as tributes the equipment that the party members are using. So if I'd realized that, I probably would have just taken one of their pieces of equipment off of them last time and we wouldn't have had to deal with it. But anyway, it's nice to have a really powerful and valuable shot staff that is not in active use, so that it's not as much of a risk. But yeah, suffice it to say, if we do end up using it and we don't want to save scrap, we can always just ante up with another piece of equipment that the party's actually using, I think. Oh, sick, you can steal arcane bottles from these guys. That's a boon. That's cool. If I read that right, you can proc that Mystic Art combo trigger even while Asbel is stunned, which is a great way to get out of a stun lock. All right.
Thank goodness.
Oh, mommy, so much experience. Interesting exercise now to wonder what level will actually end this adventure at. Because I think, unless I'm misremembering Berseria, this is certainly already the highest raw level we've gotten the party to in one of our streamed playthroughs together, which is fun to see. And again, I'm a broken record, but I think it speaks to the level of intimate attachment this game fosters between player and its characters that really, for the most part, doesn't feel like a chore to get all of those levels in, but rather just doing justice to their continued development. Yeah, there you go, Grail. So leave it to you to know the details of how to proc it, but yes, that already makes it even more useful than I realized it was. And I absolutely love that. Awesome. I was enjoying again because we haven't seen it in a while. Her Dio style Thousand Knives mystic art earlier also. I forgot that you could do that. A lot of versatility in that. I don't love that these enemies can petrify you. I might throw on a charm to avoid that if it continues to be an issue. We should probably get down the difficulty before we move on. I'm gonna switch that off of Gale Fang. Gale Maw, excuse me. I do like Gale Maw in theory, Grail, because I know you said you really enjoy it, but it dislocates Asbel from the point of contact with the enemy a little too much for me with the way I'm playing right now. It's the ultimate struggle, right? Whose mystic art is the most important one?
What else are you hiding from us? I'm not hiding anything.
I love that though. I know I've said it before, but I love hearing about all of your co-op adventures because I've had so few of them, and I really do feel like from everything you said, it just adds a totally different dimension to the game.
It's over. No mercy. It's time. Expunging. Sword.
You can feel.
It's over. Rip to pieces. Stampede strike. Eat this. Win. Just another in my tally.
Alright, on we go. If I can find the way forward, it's not over there, right? Oh, but there's a chest. I recognize I'm biased, but I'm gonna say it's not petty to say that gacha is the devil. Recognize that there are different kinds of games for everyone, but I think, especially for the kinds of gaming that we do here, it can interfere with a lot of what you're looking to get and understand and work through about a game. Speaking of someone who, as you know, has nothing but thoughts about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, but even he was frustrated by the gacha elements of that. See, Grail, I can't tell, like, literally playing through this floor, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not, because on the one hand it seems manageable, on the other hand the status effects are pretty frustrating. So, but yeah, I mean, it seems doable in the way that the others were not, so, I mean, we'll see if that holds for the boss as well, but we're still alive, and we're not, like, limping through things, so I'm feeling positive about it so far. I'll also thank you, Grail, because something as simple as it's usually to the right has helped me way more than I expected in navigating these floors. That's one of those incredibly minimal directions where you don't think it'll help that much, and these floors can seem like such mazes, but as soon as you have that in your head, it becomes much easier to avoid getting disoriented. Yeah, alright. It only took Aaron 120 hours to learn how to play the game. Can we say that's part of the lesson of Tales of Grace's F, though? I kind of feel like it is, because, like, I've said it every one of these last streams, but I am amazed that the characters are still, in almost every battle, gaining new titles and abilities. I think a lot of it, you really don't understand how to use in reliable ways until you get quite deep into the system. Unless you really make a point to learn it with a level of capacity that I simply didn't have until recently, early on. That's why the Tales of Praxis stream and With a Terrible Fate are here, to stoke your curiosity in things that you can get more value out of with no further cost to your wallet. Like, how can I better understand the themes of these games and what they are trying to tell me about how I ought to live my life even beyond them? And there's no RNG into whether or not you get valuable insights out of that. It's like Gacha, if Gacha were reliable and valuable and immutable. Oh man, all kinds of bonus monsters on this floor. Oh my god. Yeah, I'm gonna lose my mind over these status effects. Yeah, I've decided I think you are being sarcastic, Grail. These enemies are pissing me off. Especially the way the stupid fish grabs you and the balloon enemy is floating right over the hitbox of Asbel's attacks.
It was your own vanity that bested you. Or not.
They're in that perfect sweet spot of not being that hard, but being incredibly annoying. Which in some ways is almost worse for me. To the right. Onward and upward. It would be cool to at least get Asbel to level 100 before we wrap things up here. I think I just turned myself around. Okay, Grail, we might have hit the threshold. I think the music has gotten inside my head in a bad way now, too. I think I'm ready to be done with the soundtrack. But that's how long it took me. It took, what, 3 streams of working through these floors? So, although, granted, you have worked through it many more times in your gaming life than I have, so we have to take that into account, too.
I'm trembling. Why? Pascal, what's an airhead? Someone who's so smart they can control air with their mind. Wow, you're amazing.
She was amazing. Warp point, my beloved. Take me up. Take me out. Crab. 1/2 of the timeless crablet.
Why?
Sophie's beloved. Well, and especially again in a game like Tales of Grace's F amongst the Tales games Grail, right, where the characters go through so many different arcs and so much development across different ages and get so many titles, and also, let's not forget, go through specific status effect themed floors of suffering on the way to the Fodra core in Act 4, you would think that there would be some more inspired, like, alternate forms of growth as ways of overcoming status effects or turning them on their head, as you say. That is a little bit surprising to me. It almost feels like a whole, given everything else that we've talked about with the game and what it seems to be concerned with. I know, keep your eye out for the wet.
That one was for the lady next door.
It is fun. I was smiling to myself, actually, in Tales of Hearts earlier today, because, like I said, you have to rely much more on... My god, it's the... You shouldn't have told me about the camera work with the staircase pottery, because, oh my god, look at that. Let's just do it again. This is so nuts. What? Oh, you totally shattered that glass window for me. Now I can never unsee this. But for Tales of Hearts, you know, you have to keep track of the ingredients that you're using in order to be able to cook recipes, and it's true to life. Just like in the actual kitchen, you run out of eggs before any other ingredient because every damn recipe uses them. Art imitates life, I suppose. I have had enough of you, stupid paralyzing balloon. Oh, they're all the worst in their own ways. I get that the giant golems can grab Asbel and throw him around, but the fact that that stupid little fish can, just insult to injury. Yeah, I think it's like...
That should buy us some time at least, right?
I mean, Potter would probably be able to put better words to this than I can, but it almost seems like a sharp, like, stepwise function, no pun intended, of the like the distance between character and stairs and fixed camera changing. I think that's what makes it so like disorienting in a crazy way. That's true. He has to prove to his fish and demon friends that he lives, and stupid balloon friends. I keep trying to pick which one is my least favorite, but I think they're all my least favorite. Maybe that's part of it with the status effects though, Grail, because I'm thinking about what you said with it being so uneven between enemies and characters. And I guess there is a charitable interpretation you can do of it that's very in line with the the Buddhist reading that I've been advancing. The idea that, you know, it's the lotus going back into the muck water, right? Like, if you're really this enlightened bodhisattva who decides to go back into the gross realm of suffering and samsara to try to help other people get out of it, like, you have to be prepared to deal with all of the toils of the corporeal world again, right? Like, your spiritual enlightenment does not guarantee that you'll have a modicum of a better time dealing with all of the harsh realities of the physical world as you're trying to negotiate it for the sake of others. So maybe it's actually important that it's frustrating in the way that it is, and that these characters, with everything else that they've been able to overcome, have not been able to overcome that. That's one of those ideas that I half hate and half love having, because it feels apologist, but it also makes sense to me in a way that might justify it without being purely apologist in the game's infrastructure. Give me that yellow tube. That is what I'm living for. Hey, we found the other half and then some. The other whole crablets. Oh, they were listening to us the whole time. Now we just need to find a random chest with an egg to complete the joke.
We will survive.
I'm not even going to try to deal with that stupid balloon first. If I target you, then you can't grab me like a chump. I will also say, I guess we should expect the enemies to be nonsense, since they are literally dropping arcane bottles and drop bottles as things for us to steal. That is a pretty decent trade-off, all things considered.
What?
I hope I was of some use.
It's gotta have to do with the, like, band of heroes or, like, henchmen or whatever the explanation was that Solomus is his name, right, is trying to put together. Because it seems like, from what Fourier and Frederick were saying, he's kind of just picking and choosing whoever from around the world. So I don't imagine it's that Lambda sent them up here. I imagine it's probably more that this weird cosmic force of Solomus kind of sucked them up after Lambda vomited them all out all over Affinia. That's the best I can make of it, at least. Paralysis is exhausting.
It's over. This is the end. Here's the sky. Radiant light, strike forward. Divine conqueror. Strike, roar. Eat this. Eat this! Eat this! It's over! Rip to pieces! Stampede strike! Dang it! Stand the wolf! Just another in my tally.
It's so funny to me because one of the many things that I got delighted with about Earthbound back when I first encountered that years ago, because it has so many cool facets to its storytelling, in terms of making story content out of things that we don't usually consider to be story content, even down to things like the color of text boxes and things like that. But I mention it because it's also a great example of some status effects that I think have stood the test of time as some of the most interesting ones that gaming has had to offer. Like, Ness couldn't stop crying. What's that like for a status effect? What does that mean when an enemy inflicts that on a character in your party? But yeah, I think one of the reasons it has stood the test of time is that, as you say, it is definitely still the exception rather than the rule. And especially games with such a long history and like a rich library of status effects like the Tales games, you would hope that they would do more with them, but I do feel like sometimes they just get so ingrained and partitioned into the combat system that it almost becomes like a part of the design philosophy that it would confuse combat too much to do anything really like narratively fanciful with them. Which isn't, I mean, not a hard and fast rule by any means, right? Because again, look to Aaron's favorite example that he doesn't want to spoil yet for the stream, like Tales of Eternia does a lot of really cool things with storytelling and combat that has not come up in many other cases in the Tales series. So they definitely are willing to play with it sometimes, but it's one that I would definitely still like to see them play with more, no doubt about that. Well, I mention it. I know I've mentioned it before. I love this whole study that a friend and fellow game analyst of mine, Max Gorinsky, did of Earthbound on With a Terrible Fate, but I don't know if this is the one where he talks about status effects, but he talks about the nuance of storytelling through flavor text in a really cool way, which is where I was thinking of the example of the colors of text boxes. So if you want to read more about a game that does a lot of cool things with status effects, check out that whole series, check out that article. You'll have a good time. Yeah. Interesting though, Grail, because one thing that I have been processing more doing the Tales of Praxis series, which I hadn't really clocked before, is you get some cases of things like status effects showing up elsewhere in the story if you're looking for it. So one thing that I've been noticing a lot, because it happened, minor spoiler for Tales of Hearts, but something like this also happens pretty frequently in Tales of Hearts. Characters getting petrified or turned into statues. That happens a decent amount, so that petrification status effect, right? But that happens as early on as Tales of Phantasia and reemerges in more than a few of the games after that. So I know that's not quite the same thing as what you're talking about, but it makes me feel like there's play for exploring like the meaning and content of status effects more broadly than they have in the past. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either, Pottery. I can almost see it where, like, you know, you would try to do something innovative, but when you think about the actual, like, gameplay ramifications of the different degrees of freedom you have for hindering avatars in different ways and making combat harder, maybe there aren't that many axes to actually play with, right? Interesting other ways to go with it. I mean, you could say that also speaks in favor of just innovating some novel game mechanics to then hinder in novel ways. I can't think of a great example of this in Inscription off the top of my head, but I feel like Inscription as a game is a good example of that, if you know what I mean. I imagine you will know what I mean. But then also, again, like going from a narrative first perspective and then perhaps posing the question, well, how can we extend that to gameplay in one way or another? I'm also put in mind, again, of Tales of Hearts is a great example that I'm working through right now, because the whole idea, without spoiling too much for the story, is that, you know, people's inner lives are constituted by this balance of different emotions that make up the particular color of their spirit. And when the different emotional aspects of that spirit, for one reason or another, get out of whack, then they fall into the state of what's called despair, or despair, right? Which is a particular kind of sort of, you might call it a status effect, or an affectation that basically makes them incapable of functioning like a normal person, but in a way that is like very thematically rich and has a lot more substance to it, and requires certain gameplay solutions in terms of how you cure them of that status effect in a way that's different than something just like poison or burn or sudden death or what have you. I think that just, I'll add that to the list of reasons why I desperately want you to make a game so I can play it at some point, Grail. It's still on my list to read your writing, by the way. I'm excited to sink into that this week, and I'm sorry it's taken so long. Alright, that was a worthy digression. Now let's see what the last floor has to offer us for boss.
Who are you?
Tales of Innocence? Your face looks familiar to me, though I have not had access to your game, and it breaks my heart.
My name is Riala. I'm looking for a hero. Do you know
Riala.
That might be difficult. Would you mind telling us the reason for your search?
I am the incarnation of a goddess. To save my world, I must locate a hero in this time period.
That tracks.
Oh, I see. It might be best if we avoid this girl.
That would have been my guess just from the spelling, Grail. Do you pronounce it a different way in your head?
Something wrong, Hubert?
No, never mind.
What are you doing here?
We need to find Solomus.
And that means we must defeat you in battle. I'm sorry. That's okay. I'm prepared to fight as well.
If it makes you feel any better, you would not be the first goddess we felled in this journey, so it's really old hat for us at this point. Oh, Rayla? Okay, yeah. I knew a few girls in school named Rhea, so that might be why I'm predisposed to lean towards the other pronunciation, but I could see that.
Here I come!
Buckle up, Buckaroos.
I'm coming.
Very weak to assault arts. Ever the realist, as you've pointed out, right, Grail? He's consistent, if nothing else. Guys, I've already wet my pants. We should probably leave. Alright, so she's human, aerial, petrification, and slow. I'm gonna try to do the work. We'll see if it works out. So she's weak to assault arts. Can we hit it all in one? Aerial is on the left-hand branch. Aerial human is on the right-hand branch. And petrification is burial blade. Okay. So I don't know if we can do slow. I don't think he has slow on any of them. But we can get 3 out of 4, which, as we pointed out earlier, is enough to make a difference. So let's try to build that muscle memory. Might be a new hit record for us. I don't know what our current record is, but it's pretty good. Oh, Destiny 2. I was wrong. I had Tales of Innocence in my head. Well, there you have it. All the more reason that I want to play her game. desperately want to play Destiny 2 for reasons that are obvious if you've read my work. That's how I felt about Amber's voice acting, for what it's worth, Grail. Especially listening to her voice acting in Japanese in the Vita version. It tonally sounds very different in my head to the English VA that they got. In a way where, like, I don't...
Force of destruction.
This is probably unfair, but I'm glad we put that on the mixer menu. Sort of similar to Riala, they both sound just more childish than I expected. Again, I have no point of reference for Riala, but for Kohaku, I expected her voice to be a bit more just mature than the voice acting that we got in this EX dungeon. Oh yeah, I remember you saying that last week, Gail. That's fun though. It kind of becomes a love letter to all of the games that they worked on for the series over the years. Definitely one of those cases where, as we've talked about, given how thoughtful the choice of cameos and the theming of the worlds usually is in the Tales series, it makes me wish all the more that I had any background with Tales of Destiny 2 and the background of having fully finished the game with Hearts, because and also any background with Tales of Rebirth, because remember Rebirth is also in here. I'd love to try to get a full picture of what these games and these characters are trying to say in relation to their home stories in this story. Goddess incarnation, please. We just want to stop Solemnus. Thank you for not Mystic Arts in this. I think we've already used both of our Get Out of Death 3 cards. God damn. I just remembered we got... Oh, well, I thought we got 1 million arcane bottles and drop bottles. It's actually a very modest number. I'm still going to use them. Yeah, maybe? I mean, I don't know. And again, this might just be the way my ears hear it, but that's what I was saying. Like, Japanese voice acting of Kohaku to my ear did not feel that childish. Like, I would say she definitely felt childish at the points where her character was, what's the best way to say this without spoilers, kind of intentionally underdeveloped. But once her character was fully realized, it didn't strike me as especially immature in the way that the English voice direction sounded. I'm sure they were told to sound childlike, because that definitely is the voice that they're both doing. I kind of question that as the representation that they're going with for Kohaku as well. Yep, that is what I have quickly realized, that casting equals death. I'm living in fear of that Mystic Art coming back. Grand Cataclysm. I was feeling that way, but I was feeling it about her cut-in. You ready? Stop asking if I'm ready. I'm never gonna be ready for whatever kind of hurt you want to dole out on me. Man, that has me interested even more. I'm just processing this, that you said she's in Tales of Destiny 2. That has me even more eager to find a way to play Tales of Destiny 2, be it a fan localization or something, because that idea of an incarnation of a goddess seems pretty starkly at odds with the world that's represented within Tales of Destiny, so it's interesting to me to imagine how they expanded the world in the sequel. Got me eager to explore that.
I still haven't found my hero.
Well, good luck with that.
I'm holding out for hero to the end of the line. Yeah, I read a little more of the plot synopsis one time back when I was doing that article than I should have, and even just from that plot synopsis, Grail got me champing at the bit to find a way to work through it. It sounds really interesting in a number of ways that get me tuned into it. Well, that's the big secret, Pottery. They're secretly the same game. That's why Bamco is unwilling to release it in the States, because then their cover would be blown.
But we have to leave now.
Ancient donut. A donut from who knows when that's way too hard to eat. No one knows if there's a filling or not. And it's an anklet. Amazing. And see, when it gives us a cameo of something like that, it's funny enough without context that it makes me even more vehemently want to play Tales of Destiny 2. Don't remind me, dude. We gotta find a way. That's the secret. Tales of Praxis is just a front to convince us all to go do our homework and learn Japanese so that we can play all the games for real. I've got them all, so if we do our language homework, we could conceivably play them. I feel like that's how a lot of fan projects go. Speaking as someone who obviously also has a lot of passion projects he spends a lot of non-linear time on, so he can relate to that. In order to find your hero, oh, I see, so that's how it's connected. I can't get to the 10th floor. You'll need 3 items of extreme rarity to get to the 10th floor of the Zhonecage. Apparently, they can be found only by defeating some very special enemies. Rumor has it there are 3 of them, and they come in 3 different colors. Oh! So that has to be the connection with the Chroma Dragons, which we already faced. That's so cool! That has me eager to find out what connection there is between the Zhonecage and all of the lore about the mythopoeia of the world that we got when we were talking to those dragons. Also, does that mean that their master, who was ostensibly the arbiter of the world, is Solomus? And if so, why was Solomus sealed away? And if so, why is this game just a different skin on Tales of Eternia? Oh, you thought we had gotten away from it because we hadn't talked about it a lot in the last few streams. I was punking you the whole time. Don't make jokes if you fear the outcome, Grail, because that's a kind of joke that I would start as like an April Fool's Day adventure and then do very seriously. And we would all get a lot out of it. I am bummed that I totally forgot about Narakiri Dungeon when I was in Japan, because that was one of the very few Tales games that I didn't bring a copy back with me for, because I forgot that it existed. And I was too caught up in trying to find an OG copy of Fantasia, which I guess must be one of the few Japanese games that's actually rare, at least in this series, because you go through those secondhand stores in Aki and other places, and they're like every copy of every game you've ever wanted from Japan. They have like 5 to 50 of them, but I couldn't find Tales of Fantasia anywhere. Interesting. So it must be to do with the sand place that you were saying, Grail. I had to check because that's interesting to me, that based on the description we got from the narrative voice, I would have to imagine it was referencing the 3 items that we got from the Chroma Dragons, but there's got to be more to it. Interesting. Well, how about that, friends? We completed, I guess, is it fair to call that part 1 of the Zhonecage, the EX dungeon? And Aaron did enough of his homework off stream that we have a full hour to spare. We're kind of ahead of schedule for once. And don't look too closely at that comment, because if you pick apart how behind schedule we are, I'm going to break down and cry. No, we have no agenda. We're just taking our time to dig through all of it and appreciate it in all its glory. So, next up, it looks like, according to Grail, Dungeon and Sandplace at the Thing, which I am down for. I think, God, what's the easiest way to get there? Not Desert Ruins. Maybe just going from Hubert? Yeah, we can just walk to the other side from there, I think. Or maybe Sable Isole is closer? Sable Isole might be closer. Ah, we can just walk it. That's fine. Didn't you miss the desert? Don't you love how all the enemies are scared of us now? 1,000 hours, just compressed into video game time, so it's 100 hours instead, but it scales. That's right, it is a nice change of pace. Nice change of music for you too, I'll bet, huh, Grail? Roper, you want to talk to me?
Everyone stay on your game.
Wait. What?
I think that's all of them.
It's just the Outback with extra steps. Now, we would need a Great Barrier Reef that we could also explore for that to be true. Which, and welcome back to Tales of Eternia. Hey, it dropped a bag. Bingo! This must be it. Yes, these are Marion's tools for sure. Ah, remember? Hubert's erstwhile friend from his time in Stahta? The quest we started and then forgot about? You know them on sight? That's pretty impressive, little brother. Come on, let's get them back to you, Liberté. Agreed. Alright, well, we can go and fulfill Marion's wish real quick. That'll take 2 seconds. Oh, okay, yeah, I was playing around with that earlier and I couldn't quite tell, Grail. I'll try that after this. Oh my gosh, you look just like Moira. Moira? But no, it can't be her. It's not possible. Oh, we have guests? And where might you all? Where might you all? Moira? Is that really you? Darling, darling, come quick. It's Moira. Who's Moira? I think they think you're part of their family. But I don't know anyone named Moira. I can tell this is going to be problematic. Asbel, was it? Thank you so much for helping her. We are truly in your debt. Look, I don't know how to say this, but I think you have the wrong? Was this like a last-minute addition side quest? What are these lines of dialogue that we're getting? And so modest. Hee hee. I think you have the wrong. How about that? First draft, last draft. Get it out the door. Come now, darling. Don't just clam up. Say something. Right. I never thought we'd be together again. What's wrong with you? It's like you're not happy to see her at all. Yes, about that. I'd like to ask a question, if I may. Are you absolutely certain this is your daughter? Are you certain it's Moira? Are you sure Sophie doesn't just resemble her? If our word isn't good enough for you, just look at this. It's a picture of Moira we had done by a famous painter. They do look surprisingly similar. Of course they do. That's because this is our Moira. Oh, Moira, tonight we're going to celebrate your return. Yeah, there was also that one earlier that was like, when all were you? I can't even remember the string of words, but it was certainly not syntactically cogent that the character identified as wife said. Very good, ma'am. Shall I show Moira and her friends to her room? I'm sure they must be exhausted from their trip. Yes, of course, but we also need to prepare for the celebration. Psst, listen, I have to ask you something. Do you think you could help Moira's mother see the truth? There's no way that your friend Sophie can be Moira. Last year, Moira went out to the Strahta desert and was beset by monsters. Oh man. No way. I knew there was something off about this. Her parents have never recovered from the shock. I think her father realizes the truth, but with his wife happy for the first time in ages. It smacks of poor Governor General Dorr from Palmacosta a little bit. Our word won't be enough. We need proof that Sophie and Moira are two different people. Well, she may have left something behind in the desert where she disappeared. Alright, it's a long shot, but we'll see what we can do. Thank you so much. I'll be sure to post the request so everything's official. Please, just help them move on. Oh, Grail, you fool. Symphonia was always good. But that does sound like it would be a valuable addition. Is it up? I was trying to remember where Hubert's friend was to deliver the tools. Maybe do we just need to go to requests at the end? Polishing tools, there we go. All right. Oh, you found my tools. Somehow I just knew you would help me out. Thank you. Seriously. How long are you planning to keep those old things anyway? Are you crazy? These tools are what helped me open this store in the first place. They're damn near worn out. You should just throw them away and get new ones. What's going on here? Hubert gave me these tools. Aww. To a girl? I think I need to lie down. Everyone's a comedian these days. If you don't mind me asking, why did he give you tools? At a time when I was trying to figure out what to do with my life, Hubert just silently handed me these tools. Wow, not bad, Hubert. I don't remember that at all. You must be mistaken. It's true, and the moment you gave them to me, I suddenly made up my mind about the future. And about you. Oh. Oh my gosh. What are you so surprised about? She just said she made up her mind about Hubert. Oh, did I? I don't remember that at all. You must be mistaken. I think our work is done here. We should get back to more pressing issues. Good luck, Hubert. I'm going to make you proud. I promise. He's oozing game. He just doesn't brag about it, which makes him all the cooler. Steadfast Denier. Gotta look at the description on that title. The Buddhist, no doubt. His policy is to never reveal his past, no matter what might have happened. Ah, back to the unwillingness to talk about aspects of your past theme. I love it. That's great too. Something so nice about how he, like, we just get a little window into his time in Strahta, where after he was banished by his own family for reasons he didn't understand, and felt isolated from Asbel and Asbel's friends even when he was back in Lant, rather than, you know, curling up and becoming withdrawn and resenting everyone, he kind of turns the other direction and creates the kind of positive energy he wishes he had had in his own upbringing, where he sees someone struggling with who they want to become, and can just give them literally and metaphorically new tools with which to create the future that they want in the world. Really special. Puts me in mind of that, like the mausoleum of his Strahtan family too, and just a little quiet moment of reflection he had there. It's nice. I feel like as we peel this back and think about the characters a little more as we wrap up, it's not just that each of them has their own past that is difficult for them to share with the others, but also that we get different kinds of windows into that past. Like Hubert, these with people from his past that he doesn't really want to elaborate on. Malik, we get the extensive flashback sequences of his time in Fendel. Pascal, we get sort of her almost just like the motive force of her nonsense inventing and scheming, and then like other people from her life like Fourier and Poisson commenting about her in the background while she's doing that. Like each one I think has a characteristic way of giving us access to what they've been through before. The real Huberts were the Maliks we made along the way. It's all of them though. That's why it's good to bring back to this, because I know I keep punting to Malik just because he's such a great and central example of it, and to be honest, I love Malik. But you do, I mean, it's a theme in the game for a reason. You see it in so many of the characters.
Are you close with that craftswoman, Hubert? I barely know the woman. We were in the same unit once. That's all.
Come on, you can tell us the truth, Hubert.
You're on my case too? It's none of your business.
Well, you don't need to be so mean about it.
Hey, take it easy, you two. Let me ask you something then.
All right.
How are things with my brother? Don't tell me you reunited after 7 years and nothing's happened.
No, nothing happened. Shut up.
What was that all about? Nothing.
Speaking of everyone having their own language for this stuff. Yeah, it's funny, Grail, because I even had to do a double take when you were saying this. I think just because of the other games that were released around its time, I talk about misremembering games. I always just have it in my head that free running is something that's available. Excuse me, something that's available in Tales of Symphonia. But I remember being surprised by that when I went back to it for the remastered version. I was like, "Oh, what's the button combination for free running?" Because I can't seem to remember it or make it work. And rediscovering that it was something that was not available in the game was really quite jarring to me. Now my stew will taste better than before. Too bad Mom drank half the wine before I even started to cook with it. Alright, we have a hand-drawn map for President Paradine. Several high officials have been kidnapped, and the culprits are on Riot Peak's 20th floor. Please help, we have no authority there. And an Amarcian looking for a sea blue statue, which disappeared 60 years ago. Rumors say it was last seen in this area. Thank you so much. This is an item of almost unbelievable historical value, and you have no idea how much it means to me. And... I forgot about the kidnapping plot. All these side quests. It truly never ends. You're kidding me, but I thought it said you need special unique items. Have we discovered this one-shot staff of Pascal's just to be the meme that solves everything in the game, even though it's not meant to? So I can get on board with that. I gotta know what we're working with. I received the map you recovered from the culprit. Nicely done. I knew I could rely on you. Now it's only a matter of time before the hostages are freed. Mr. President? Yes. Have you considered the possibility that someone behind the scenes has been pulling the strings? Good point. If so, then we just have to... At ease, Asbel. What? How come? Ugh. Hubert's concerns extend beyond simply identifying whether or not such a person might exist. Don't worry, Hubert. Oswell is not behind this. Sir, did you know that my father was... that he was... I've heard talk, yes. But I can assure you that he had nothing to do with this particular incident. I see. Thank you, Mr. President. Please forgive me for speaking out of turn. Forgiveness denied. What? Unless you do me a favor. A favor, sir? You may bring it over now. I want you to take this. Oh, we might not be that far actually, Grail, because I think I only realized today that the like the value is tracked when you're looking at items to use in the Zhonecage, like you can see on the UI, and I think it was like 168,000 and change. So maybe doing it a couple more times will help. But I'm happy to go to the desert first. That's so much the better. I want you to take this. Wait, is that? I want you to use this when you fight. Consider it a penance of sorts. I see. This is an order from your president himself. Dissent will not be tolerated. Snickers in Alexei. Gillshiner. A fishy thing that's like curved into the shape of a blade or something. Oh, Hubert's silly weapon. I forgot about the silly weapons. Oh, do we need to do something with it before we can use it? Not seeing it here. Oh, that's right, it's a material, so we have to use it when we're dualizing. Alright, I think that cleared out the request from here. So now we can march on through the desert, also keeping half an eye out for proof of the death of that poor family's daughter. Because the side quests never end. And I love it! Oh, I should check just in the event that we do end up wanting to use this for the EX dungeon. Is Pascal's shot staff something that we can further dualize right now? Oh, it's probably... No, it's probably not tempered because I took it off of her so that we could barter with it. Okay, this will keep it fabulous. I'm all about keeping it fabulous. I didn't really understand how qualities worked very well until Grail sent me that guide, so so shout out to you, Grail. Blue Sky Blades, alright. Even further new weapons. Pike! Oh, we gotta see that. The biggest fish in the world. I love it. A penance indeed. Okay, and now we can also switch Pascal's weapon so that she can start tempering that while we go. There you are. Fabulous. Alright. And she got a new title, Alchemist. Alright. The titles never end, the stories never end, our time with these beloved characters never ends. I keep thinking of, I think it's the trophy for spending 100 hours in Vesperia, but the narrative voice on it says something like, the journey will continue for as long as you want. I'm definitely feeling that vibe in Grace's F right now. Okay, the proof is on the western side, and if you want to go to the extra dungeon, just teleport to Ray or whatever it's called and go right. Super. I assume this is what you mean by the western side of the desert, Grail, but if not, I mean, desert's not that big. I think we'll be fine. Right. Oh, it's its own area? Got it. So, oh, and we're in Strahta Desert. Oh, that's right. It's on the way out to the Strahta Desert ruins. Right, okay. Well, we might as well do that now so that we don't forget about it before we go into extra innings with that other content. So here, if we travel here, that'll probably get us close enough. And then we can go to the other place. The extra dungeon, as you say. There it is. A star is born. A sad star from the looks of it. A fallen star, if you will. What is it, Captain? There are human bones in here, and judging from their size, they once belonged to a child. Oh, one just about Sophie's age. Do you think it's certainly possible? What's this? I see. Captain? If she was inside its stomach, that would explain why her parents didn't find any remains. Moira's dead? I was thinking the same thing, Grail. I didn't want to be the one to say it. It's okay. We're going to take her home now. We'll take her back to her family. Okay. Moira's locket. Boy, another quest that's really interesting for us to be doing now. Grail, I wonder if you know whether it only opens now or if we could have done it before Act 4, because that idea of Sophie going through this quest with, you know, that concerns a child who so closely resembles her, evidently, after Sophie has been adopted into Asbel's family and has had her own wrestle with the nature of death and has developed her sense of what she wants to accomplish in her life, really makes the way in which she's coping with and making sense out of this family's suffering hit differently. We can just warp to Hubert, I guess. It is called Ulray, Grail. Good memory. See, at least one of us has a memory for place names. Back to the inn. Isn't it so nice how you don't have to sacrifice any items or work through impossible monsters in order to complete these quests? Didn't you miss that? Nah, I'm enjoying the Zhonecage. I'm just messing. Rapid Retriever. Thank you so much for your help. Madam isn't feeling well at the moment, so I must thank you on her behalf as well. I'm sure Moira is glad to finally be home. And I would like to thank you as well. Sir, what are you doing here? I knew you asked these people for help. I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to do that. Please, sir, I should apologize. I overstepped my bounds. And? Yeah, another weird punctuation mark. Look at that. It's alright. I'm glad my daughter is finally home. I'm sorry for putting you through this, Sophie. When we saw you, it was like our daughter had finally come back. Anyway, take care, and thank you. This is an interesting prefiguration also of like one of the central motions in Tales of Berseria, where Velvet names Malik number 2, later Fee, Laphicet, after her brother for very similar reasons to what the husband is saying. Like, looking at you, I thought that this family member I loved who died had come back, and I wanted to use that as a way of recapturing my love for that person. Anyway, take care, and thank you. Shouldn't we say goodbye to Moira's mom? Maybe not. Seeing you right now would only upset her further. We just ruined Sophie's chance to become the only daughter of a wealthy family. Malik, my man. Yeah, I guess we did. None of that matters. I already have a family. Rack that up too on lines that have an entirely different meaning as we're working through this after Act 4 in our continuity with the game, because she quite literally already has another family. Asbal and the captain, and everyone else is my family now. Sophie, Oh, is Asbel crying? Hey now, come on. It's not like you're sending her off to be married. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a lucky girl, Sophie. You've got people who really care about you. It's okay, Asbel. I'll cry when you get married, too. This game. What's that supposed to mean? Lucky girl. Getting titles on titles. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying about analyzing games earlier, Gray. Like, no better way to get something to stick in your head forever than thinking way too much about it. Usually in a good way, is my experience. She learned how lucky she was to have such caring friends when she was mistaken for a young heiress. Love that. We were also going to go back and get Asbel's other costume title. I'm realizing now. Not too late. Never too late. Yes, it makes me more interesting in kind of like the nitty-gritty of the localization process, because like I said, it'd be one thing if those little like grammatical quirks and weird translation things happened across the game, as you do get in some games and even some Tales games like we've seen before on the stream. But this game has been remarkably and consistently well translated and localized from what we've seen, with like the weird singular glaring exception of the dialogue in that one quest. So I don't know if they, like, their regular person was out that day and like a temp translated it or something, but definitely had some funny character to it. It was my plan. I had to get out of town first. Come on, have a little faith. Yeah, and I might end up writing about that idea, Grail, and it's certainly worth us talking about before, because I want to be clear. I don't want you to walk away from this playthrough thinking, oh, Aaron thinks that Tales of Grace's F is a time travel game in the same sense that Tales of Fantasia is, because I think that's just a misunderstanding, and it's a bridge too far to say that these characters are literally traveling time in the way that, say, Cress is able to use the facility at Thor to travel through time. I don't think that's the case. But I do think it just strikes me that the way in which the game's post-game is nested in a return to an earlier time demands some kind of explanation. It's in the other direction. Like, it very easily could have been structured in other ways, and given all that we've talked about in terms of the like specificity and nuance with which the various parts of these games are organized relative to each other, I think we need to acknowledge that, certainly from our perspective as players, we're seeing the narrative in a non-linear way. And I think the more kind of metaphysically fanciful thing that I would say after that is based on the way in which these characters make sense of their place in the world and have perspectives on it, and also based on what they carry into this post-game, both mechanically and thematically, from Act 4, it seems like there's a sense in which they also have some kind of memory or understanding of what they have been through in the future that is helping them to work through the post-game in Act 3 in different ways than they would have been able to if they had just come across this during their first time in Act 3 when we as players were working through it with them. So I think that's a really important distinction to mark, the difference between, what does time travel look like in terms of negotiating a narrative non-linearly from the perspective of a reader versus, navigating time non-linearly for characters. But I think one of the many things that's special about the Tales games, and that I think we're seeing on display in Tales of Graces, is that based on the ways in which the different parts of the narrative are put together with the themes of the narrative, those lines can be blurred a little bit, and we can see the character's perspective changing, even if they're not, even if it's not literally part of their story that they've accessed some device that allows them to travel across space-time in the way that Crest can. Up ahead, you'll find some rundown old ruins and the wacky scholars who camp out in them all day. I'm in! Back to the uncharted sand stretch. Never miss an opportunity to save your game. Yeah, when were the other times, Grail? Do you remember? So that is interesting. I feel like it's a relatively rare thing to see characters, especially main characters, actually cry. We certainly get a lot of them breaking down, but you're right. I think it's an important distinction that Asbel actually cries, and that's part of his story. Yeah, vulnerable is a good word for it. Yeah, I'll have to think about that, because I feel that you are right, but I also can't remember right off the top of my head when it was. He's been through a lot. Oh, you know what? Because I was thinking, like, there's got to be a reason for this. And going back to Act 4, speaking of the significance of that at this point in the post-game, remember, I don't even think it was just Asbel. I think it was a moment of basically the whole party crying when Sophie had that really sad reflection that she wanted to be human and recognized that the way in which she was designed meant that she would never be human, because then they were all crying and she was like, yeah, I wish I could cry and I can't even cry, and that's how I know I'm different from you all. So yeah, talk about important moments that are centered on tears and the significance of them. Because that's I mean, for all the talk we've had of flower symbolism and things like that, that's a pretty trenchant symbol as well, right? The idea of tears as this kind of organic and natural reaction to suffering. And if you lack that mechanism, it's almost like suffering still happens to you and yet you don't know how to process it, which then ties in quite nicely with these Buddhist and therapeutic ideas we've been talking about of the party putting in the effort to help people get in touch with their suffering and figure out how to vocalize it in the first place, like we said is happening a lot with the bosses in the Zhonecage. So yeah, I could see why crying would be more informative in this game than in some of the other Tales games. You know, it's kind of impressive that they were able to reproduce in such numbers. It's another example of how much the world is changing. Come on, we can wipe the floor with these guys. Keep your guard up, Pascal, and remember that pride goeth before a fall. Yeah, well, my boot goeth before their butts. And that's their whole relationship in a nutshell. Child's play.
No one can stand before my blade.
See? Easy peasy. Pascal. Huh? I told you not to let down your guard. This is why I have to keep an eye on you all the time. Oh. Those the parents? They look bigger. The swarm seems endless. We need to take them out all at once. You got it. Asbel, Captain. Don't worry. We've got this.
I'm trembling.
Oh no, they're the same size. It's just play on perspective.
Yeah, all right. I did it. Go me.
There she goes again.
I know, I was going to say, I feel like at almost level 110, we're going to be okay even if the swarm does go on forever. Might get a little boring, but we're not going to be at risk. How far we've come since the first time we ventured into this area. Whew. I think that's it. Nice job spotting them, Hubert. Well, someone around here needs to be attentive. Thanks, little bro. You totally saved my bacon out there. I suppose it's too much to hope that you learned something from this, but do try to be careful from here on out, alright? I was just thinking that, Grail. What the hey? Yeah, there's something over there and stuff. What is it? Damn, we're in no shape to battle more monsters. They're definitely in shape to battle more monsters. Get over here, little bro. You gotta see all this stuff. And check out this awesome outfit. Oh my gosh, I gotta try this on immediately. Ta-da! So, what you think, little bro? We weren't done talking, you know. You know something? Those two might actually be a good fit for each other. Might? Pfft. And kids, as we now know, were a good fit for each other. Abandoned cargo. Cargo abandoned at the Sand Shroud Ruins. I'll say that 5 times fast. Free Spirit. I assume it's an outfit title based on the conversation. Her free-spirited nature means she has no problem putting on clothes that conceal her age. Oh, I gotta see what this costume is. Arcane bottle. I know, I feel like in the broader trajectory of Tales games, for all the time we've spent in this one, we've surfaced relatively few outfits for the characters. Like at this point in most games, you got like at least a couple, maybe three or four. We're definitely getting them, but it seems like within the huge mass of side quests and side content, they're clearly pretty deeply nestled in there since we're still discovering them only now. Still didn't even end up getting all the swimsuits, although we've stumbled upon a decent number of them without explicitly trying to find them. Oh, is that why they paywalled more of them? Well, that's kind of a bummer. I was hoping it was just more deeply buried within the game itself. I'd hoped to examine these ruins more closely, but perhaps I'll do so in the future. Ah, looks like the Amarcian key would fit in here. Try to insert it. Just when I had finally forgotten about that key we picked up back on Fodra. Gave up the uniquely shaped key that was used widely by the Amarcians over 1,000 years ago. Yeah, I'm remembering actually even one of the few things that was in that special edition of Graces that I unboxed on the stream was like a download voucher for the, I think, Tales of Destiny DLC outfits. For the crossover cameos like we were talking about, I'm fine with that, but to do it at the expense of the tried and true heart of a Tales game that is, you know, in-game outfits for characters to discover that are tied to titles, it's a little bit of a downer. Yeah, I've been quite happy with the character of the outfits that we've gotten so far. They may be few and far between, but they definitely do seem to be quite stylish and distinctive in a way that they aren't always. Oh, fun! Yeah, I forgot that they can change the music with the outfits. That's also very neat. I don't know how I feel about the association between Asbel and Leon, though. It doesn't sit super well with me. What level enemy is this that we have to deal with? Crooning Golem. You're fighting with the Crooning Golem, baby! Level 60, alright. Push over.
It was your own vanity that bested you. Or not.
They're changing the camera focus! They're trying to make it look fake! Fuck, fuck, fuck! We could keep going with that one for a while, couldn't we? Okay, so that's the way to a puzzle. Ooh, unique victory quotes. That is a fun carrot also, Grail, definitely.
These ruins look quite ancient.
Yeah, they look like more Amarcian ruins. In fact, now that I think about it...
You know something?
Remember the heat ray cannon back in Fendel? Well, this guy is its counterpart.
So this one was helping us the whole time and we never knew.
Yeah, and so we should totally thank it. Namu. Heat ray cannon.
Huh? What does Namu mean?
Okay, we're good.
It's a mispronunciation of Namco, obviously. That was the other fun thing about the Tales of Heart sequence that I worked through most recently. There was a, yet another mana cannon in the series. Puka Hellmite? What the heck are you? Why are you the cutest?
We are
Awesome! Unbeatable! Amazing!
and unable to coordinate.
Two very good choices, Grail, definitely. Oh, that's why you were dressed like that. Hilarious. Speaking of not getting all the swimsuits back, yeah. Oh, also, just for the sake of trivia for those who are interested, because I remember it came up back when we were talking about mana cannons before I lived inside the script of Tales of Phantasia while I was writing my Chester article. So, at least in the version that we got, the Magitech weapon is not referred to as a mana cannon. So I can see why, after everything that happens in Tales of Symphonia and the way in which it's used at the store within the story. Like, I think it's reasonable that you would draw the inference to thinking it's, for all intents and purposes, the same as the mana cannon, or maybe, like, you know, without without the people of Midgard's realizing
Let's
it.
keep
You know,
this
maybe
up.
they're drawing on like the plans and designs from something ancient like the mana cannon, but it is just referred to as the Magitech weapon. So there you go. The more you know. Dry resolve. Well, that kind of tracks with Cress and who he is.
Hey, haven't we seen
I
something
am
like this
going
before?
to defeat Daos.
It seems this place conforms to the same design principles as those ruins in Fendel.
Where we activated devices to open doors, right?
Yepers. So as long as we remember that, getting through here should be
Famous last words. Pascal, why do you have to jinx us like that? I'm not excited about this. I have no delusions that we'll be able to work through this in the next 15 minutes, but we can get started at least. Multiple LF lines. Oh, this is just reminding us of how this works. Alright, I think we'll be able to figure it out. The first room at least, hopefully. So we're trying to get to those doors. Alright. I've said it once, I'll say it again. Do I look like a tree hugger to you? Oh, with this beard, maybe I do. Maybe the line doesn't translate. That's right. Everyone knows global warming as a concept was originally invented by Tales of Fantasia, and then scientists and Final Fantasy VII both stole it. I'm telling you though, people say, people including me, that it's always a good time to play Final Fantasy VII because its lessons and thoughts only become more pertinent to the world around us with each passing year. I think the same is true, if not maybe even more true, for Tales of Fantasia. Like the mystic sort of generosity of spirit, which ends that game with the conferral of the mana seed to Darius Karlon, I think is just a special, beautifully understated kind of magic and ethic that you don't get a lot in stories these days, and isn't really embodied in a lot of the world these days. And I think a lot of people would benefit from trying to live that value in their lives. I know it came up in my studies, Chester, but I find myself still often with that thought. I might end up writing something more about it at some point. Talk about an ending that stays with you. I guess we gain nothing from fighting these enemies. It's just a force of habit after all the floors of the Zhonecage. Must kill every enemy, keep the difficulty level down.
Thanks. I'll use them to protect us all.
Is there something different here? No, it's the same. Okay, okay. Kill all the monsters. Sure, sure.
Everyone stay on your game.
Eat this! That was hardly worth dirtying my blade.
You're a bad guy, but people can change, Grail. If Tales of Graces has taught us anything, it's never too late to redeem yourself. That was something it would have been nice to see at the end of Act 4 that we didn't quite see. Just that idea of, you know, the whole impetus for what we go through in that act is this idea that the monsters are running amok, which ends up being the result of Fodra's spirit being out of balance, but especially with that image of the monsters being so peaceful and seeking harmony within the garden on Fodra, which I still clearly haven't gotten over. I do kind of wish we could have gotten an epilogue or some kind of follow-up, seeing, you know, what we had known to be monsters or the things we'd had to fight, getting back into harmony with the world and actually coexisting with everyone. Tales does enough interesting things with monsters and the kinds of creatures that you fight that it makes me wish they would just emphasize that like this much more, if you know what I mean. Because I know they have the language and the like the background and the lore that they've created to play with those ideas in really interesting ways. With, you know, what it is to realize that the things you're thinking of as monsters aren't really monsters, and figuring out like different ways to heal the ecosystem or restore balance. Because again, you get a lot of those themes in so many words, just not so much with the like the literal enemies that you have to fight in battles. So I'd love to see more of that at some point. I think to me it's kind of this is almost something that maybe I'll talk about at some point as like one of the, what I see as one of the cornerstones of like how the series resolves its stories, because right now at least I haven't thought this through very much, but I think a lot of the conclusions have to do with sort of more of setting intentions for the world in the future rather than really changing the world as such. That's kind of the trick of Tales of Symphonia that for me has made Dawn of the New World work more the more I've thought about it, right? Is that you think they've changed the world at the end of Tales of Symphonia, because in a very literal way they've changed the structure of it, but of course changing the structure of the world doesn't entail that everyone from the different worlds is suddenly going to get along with one another and actually live in peace and harmony and all that good stuff, which is why then it's possible to see all of that conflict and distrust and everything that still needs to be worked through in Dawn of the New World, right? So I think in a similar way, what we see quite explicitly at the end of Act 4 with Lambda saying, you know, I'm willing to talk to Fodra and help her understand what I'm learning and how I've come to see humans differently. And I know it's going to take a long time, but time is something that we both have plenty of. It's like, to me, it's part of the magic of what I think makes the series work and what just gets me more interested in it as we continue to study it further, because I do think like where other JRPG series are very concerned with like, oh, you know, change the world and change the course of fate and all of this stuff. The closer I look at the Tales games, the more they strike me as kind of, I almost want to say more realistic, in the sense that as much as it ends up with questions of, you know, fighting gods and these larger than life things, like the problems and the resolutions never feel larger than life to me. They feel deeply human and relatable, where we're looking at how history has come to impact who we are and what we're trying to decide to do in the future, and what kind of future we want to aim at, even acknowledging that it might never come to pass, right? I think it's harder to tell a perfectly satisfying hero's journey that way, but I think the stories as a result of that end up being, I would say, much more sophisticated, with more complex themes that you feel compelled to really try to internalize and live out in your life beyond the game, as I always talk about. I think that's part of what keeps me excited about these games. Yeah, and to be clear, Pottery and Grail, I think there's a sense in which I would agree it's both. I think, you know, with the games that I have in mind, which again strikes me as most of them without doing a cataloging, but I mean, Vesperia is another good example with the barriers like Grail is talking about. I think part of what makes them interesting to me is that there often is a sense in which the structure of the world has changed by the end. But I think the point of contrast that I see with a lot of other series versus Tales is that it's quite clear that change in structure, to me at least, feels more representative of the party and oftentimes the world setting their intentions for the kind of future that they want. Like, you know, the reasons that everyone elects to give up the Blastia and Tales of Vesperia, since we're inevitably talking about Vesperia now, versus how the world is actually going to have to adapt and change and learn to live without the Blastia in a mana-first world after the end of the game, right? Whereas I think a lot of other games would see those structural reconfigurations as full-blown solutions or representation of the full end state of everything you've been fighting for throughout the whole journey. And I think the Tales games, in everything from the arcs of the characters to the fact that they encourage you to no end to New Game Plus and keep working through these arcs again and again and try different things out, and even the way in which they engage with the histories of their worlds, I think are quite clear that we're only really seeing like one story and part of the development of the worlds, and you know, the completion of development that we do see is more to do with the characters and other people in the world, even beyond the main party, coming to understand how to make decisions that are consistent with their characters and the kinds of communities that they want to contribute on an ongoing basis, right? So that idea that, as I said, and as you echoed, Pottery, it's not the end of the story, right? It's rather kind of figuring out how to set the intention to open up the next chapter of the story, if you like. This part is at least not crazy yet, so I'm happy about that.
I'm trembling. Why? We did it, Sophie! We did it, Sharia.
The game is louder than me? Okay, let me turn it down a little bit. I'll try not to overcorrect. There. Alright, I turned the game down slightly. I might be talking lower than usual too, so that might be part of it. But let me know if it's still an issue, and I'm happy to fiddle with it more. Okay, this wants to go in the other direction, I think. At least this is more soothing music to operate with than the manic soundtrack of the Zhonecage. Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to think, like, I was doing the Rolodex of Tales games in my head and asking, like, is there any game in which it really feels to me like things are fully resolved and the world is, like, transformed with finality at the end? And I think, for me, well, first, high level, right? I think the way in which you're going to answer that question depends a lot on how you choose to read and interpret these games. So it's a question where your interpretive lens matters a lot. So with that in mind, I would say that for me, I feel like the only games where I feel a sense of like full resolution in a way that is important to the story and what it's trying to say are the ones that I would say are esoteric and mystical in the way that I talk about with Tales of the Abyss, where I think if you want to read the journey as like a symbolic way of rebalancing a spiritually fractured universe, then I think there can be a clear way where even if, you know, like history is still going to play out with other, wars between kingdoms and events in the future of the world, there's a sense in which you have spiritual closure by the end of the story in a way that to me does make it feel more final than the other games. So for me, like, off the top of my head, that denotes Tales of the Abyss and Tales of Eternia, which is part of why I'm so up on Tales of Eternia. To no one's surprise, I think it lays a lot of the spiritual foundation for the kind of journey that Luke then goes on with everyone in Tales of the Abyss. Yeah, and obviously I'm talking about the ones that I've played, Grail. That's a really good question about Tales of Berseria, Pottery, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I'm definitely struggling with and trying to work through again right now is this idea of how to see the games in conversation with one another and also on their own terms. Because that's one of the things that came up again and again on the stream, and I really want to try to tease that apart and do justice to it in this study that I'm doing. I think maybe. I think that's a good potential candidate. I'll have to think about it more. Because I would say as a duology, I mean, this is the whole heart of what I'm working on in my study. I think, to my mind and my reading, it feels quite clearly like it's trying to mark itself out as the first 2 steps of a 3-step process to get to the possibility of ethics, which I think is very cool. And so, of course, if you're thinking about the duology and thinking about it in that lens, then by definition, there's going to be more to do by the time you end things with Tales of Zestiria. And I think Zestiria itself is quite clear about that. I think the original is quite clear about it, and then I think, just in case anyone was unclear on it, I feel like my read of Alicia's story is that it's just further emphasizing that to people. But Tales of Berseria, I feel like I could see the case for that feeling complete with closure on its own terms if it were not represented as a prequel. Which is hard to imagine, because I mean, it is a prequel, right? And it wants to be coded in that way, but we did also talk about how it's easy to get pretty deep into it, even if you've played Tales of Zestiria, and not notice that right away in a very cool way. We can just read this real quick, but I think it's quite intuitive. In areas with elf lines of different colors, each elf line must pass through all panels on the floor that correspond to its color. Furthermore, if 2 colors pass through the same node, they'll create a new color. This is where we're going to start losing our minds on Wednesday, so look forward to that. Yeah, but I would say, and part of why I lean towards saying probably for 2 reasons, Pottery, and then we can wrap up here because I know we're at time. I think it does tell a very nice closed story of Velvet coming to terms with her family trauma, and also the value of one's emotional life being prioritized over governing oneself according to reason. So I feel like in a vacuum that's quite tight. And then also I feel like, because unlike Tales of Zestiria, it also gives us a whole origin story for the cosmos with the lore that we get at the end of the Heavenly Step. I feel like that to me also goes quite a bit of distance towards grounding it as this single kind of mystical journey to rectify the cosmos in this broken way, like we were talking about with Tales of the Abyss and Tales of Eternia. And so I could almost see it as like the journey of a villainized savior to redeem the world, if you're just seeing it in terms of Velvet's journey and set Tales of Zestiria to the side. That's a really interesting idea, though. I hadn't thought about that at all. No, I know, but I can run for now. Listen, if I were to go there now, we would extend the stream by at least an hour of Aaron purely losing his mind. And this is fun because I'll remind everyone of this story that I've told more than once on this stream. So I vividly remember in like the depths of these colored tile dungeons, and we're not even in the depths yet to the best of my recollection, but it was one of those like classic puzzle crawling experiences that I got to maybe at 1 or 2 in the morning when I was playing the game for the first time, and my brain was just so melted that I didn't know how to work through it at all, and I probably like banged my head against the wall for a good 45 minutes before just like I got in the zone where I didn't even think about it, and just like I processed the entire puzzle in a way that I could not intellectualize or explain to you, but I just solved it without even knowing how to solve it. So we'll see if I can recapture that lightning in a bottle on the stream. My guess is probably not, but you know, we got resources and plenty of ways to cheat our way through things if they get hairy, but have a little faith in your boy. We have a decent hit rate with success in decent amounts of time for the puzzles in Tales of Grace's F, I feel. So it's possible, at least. Working backwards. All right, there's something. Yeah, so it'll be fun to at least toil with it for a bit, but we also don't have to toil with it for overly long when we get back. See, that's probably how I would get through it nowadays, Pottery. So we'll see if I actually resort to extra implements this time around, but one way or another, we will find our way through it. All right, my dear friends. Well, we got through, I won't say the rest of the Zhonecage, but we got through floor 9. We met another cameo from another game to which we sadly don't have access in the West. Bamco, please hear my pleas. Give us access to your beautiful masterpieces in toto so we can enjoy the whole series for the wonders that it provides. And we were able to clean up yet a few further side quests, which had some unexpected yet really rewarding points of continuity, not just with where we've been, but especially with the fourth act, which is in our past and future, depending on how you look at it. And now here we are from the mind-numbing post-game of grinding through enemies to the mind-numbing post-game of grinding through puzzles. That's right. It could be the wall bridge puzzle, so there's that at least. Right, I say we have a decent hit rate with puzzles, but I guess I was already intentionally repressing the wall bridge puzzle, so take that as you will. I was having this conversation with someone over the weekend, and it's one that we have probably talked about on the stream before, but the more time I spend with these games, the more I appreciate, especially among video games broadly, but I would say even within the family of JRPGs, how distinctly multimedia these Tales experiences are, where you have combat, you have world travel, but you also have these robust, almost visual novels with all of the skits that you engage with, and you have these complex puzzles that you would get in something like a logic-based phone game nowadays or something, on top of just flying across the world and discovering areas that you didn't know would be there. So getting this kind of post-game that runs the gamut of all those different kinds of content, I think, is really rewarding to me, and just celebrating not just the thematic diversity of the game, but also the structural diversity. So I will continue to suffer and toil, but know that I do it with a passion and still respect for this game. I'm not yet backing off from my claim at the end of Act 4 that it is a perfect game. So stay tuned. We'll see if I give up on that or not. I know, Grail, I know I said it before the stream, but I'm delighted you're still enjoying it, and I will probably crack that OST, just because knowing you and knowing the way you think about music, that'll be fun for me, and knowing me might even be my way into the game, so we'll see how that goes. Yes, Grail and Pottery, always a pleasure. So nice to see you, hang with you, work through this never-ending story of ours. Pink, it was nice seeing you show up again too. Hope you're not a stranger. Nice to round out this real life JRPG party and live book club with some new and new old faces, and excited to make a plan for Tales of Exilia and Tales of Exilia 2 after this. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll definitely keep talking about Hearts one way or another, Grail, because like I said, I am dialed in now, and you know what that means for me. So it's all the more pleasurable for me to have a fellow Tales head who I can even just voice my reactions to. But that's not to say it's off the list for streaming at some point, because it would be really fun to go through with everyone, and I already have a million thoughts of things that would be fun to write about and think about further. Because the Tales series never ends, nor does Tales of Praxis. But this was a nice way of wrapping up the stream too, thinking about some of the more global implications in terms of what the series is concerned with and what it's trying to express through its story. So I love this post game too for teasing out some broader questions of what we're doing when we study games and what we're doing when we study the Tales series. Let's keep that up as we continue on to wrap up Tales of Grace's F, because even as the story has mostly been told, there are a million more connections and things to unravel in this story itself. But B, remember, the whole conceit of what we're doing is trying to derive the thematic content and language of the series as a whole. So don't forget to bring those bifocals to look at this game, but also think about, and now that we all collectively have at least a decent number of Tales games under our belt just from doing these streams, ask yourself, sit back and ask the more global question of, what are these games wrestling with? What do they want us to think about? What do they leave us with at the end of their stories versus what they promise at the beginning? And what might they want us to think about that? How might they want us to act in response to that? So hold those questions in your mind, give you something to think about and something for us to chat about as Aaron melts his mind with some puzzles on Wednesday. My last name is oftentimes confused with Sudoku, but don't let that fool you. I am only mediocre at best when it comes to logic puzzles, despite my degree in philosophy. So we'll see how it goes, but I'm looking forward to it. Always a pleasure, everyone. I'm Aaron Sudoku, not Sudoku, the founder of withaterriblefate.com. Go check out our website for other studies, big and small. And I'll hope to see you back here for more of the Tales of Praxis stream on Wednesday, same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Always a pleasure. Until then, my dear friends, think well and game well. Next time.